Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our look at John, the Gospel of John. And today we're looking again at John 5. And this is a great chapter. It's one I haven't read in a long time, and I'm seeing some different things in here. So we're going to start right out on verse 1, and we're going to see where it leads us. And it starts out this way. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish festivals. Now, sometime later means, between chapter 4 and chapter 5, where was Jesus? He was doing ministry in that area of Galilee where he had healed the son of the official, remember, and where he had met the Samaritan woman in Samaria, that whole area of Galilee. This is where Jesus was during this time. And sometime later, he went back to Jerusalem, which would have meant traveling south, for the Jewish festivals. Now, the Jewish festivals, I looked it up. There were three major festivals that Jewish men were required to go to Jerusalem for. And that would have been the Festival of Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread. That's one festival. The second was the Festival of Harvest, which is sometimes called the Pentecost, or the Festival of Weeks, and then the Festival of Shelters. So Jewish men went to Jerusalem for these festivals. This was their way of worship. And Jesus wanted to follow that. As much as he fulfilled the law, he also wanted to keep the law perfectly. And so he did go back to Jerusalem for the Jewish festival, whatever was there. Okay, now, there is in Jerusalem, this is verse 2, now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Okay, first of all, the sheep gates. You think of the temple kind of being like maybe on the east side of Jerusalem, and there would have been the horse gate and the golden gate, which went directly in, and then the sheep gate kind of went around behind. And it may have been called that because it's where the people brought their sheep when they were going to sacrifice them. Maybe that's why it was called the sheep gate, because people were bringing lambs in for the sacrifice. But north of that sheep gate, not in the temple, but if you went north from that sheep gate, there were these pools. And modern scholars believe that these pools were originally maybe set up by the Greeks for some kind of a pagan ritual, and they were believed to have healing powers. And maybe they were advanced maybe by the Romans, because Romans took up after the Greeks. And these 5 colonnades that are mentioned here, was interesting that many people used to use that years ago as an example of how the Bible was incorrect. And then as archaeologists discovered more and more and dug this pool area out, they found indeed 5 covered porches, which are the colonnades, the 5 levels, and porches. So by tradition, this was an area where people went for healing. And Bethesda, the word Bethesda means house of mercy in Hebrew. And at first I thought it was the same thing as, there's a town called Bethesda, but that's in Galilee. So it's just the same name, but it's not in that town. It was just named House of Mercy, which would make sense if lots of people went there for healing, right? So we continue on here with verse 3. Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. So think of these 5 porches and these pools here that people were hoping were going to cure them. And here are all these disabled people, lame people, paralyzed people, invalids, blind people. They must have had someone bring them to that area, or possibly bring them food so they could stay in that area, because they themselves probably couldn't come back and forth with ease. So probably they had family who helped them, or friends. Verse 5. One who had been there as an invalid for 38 years. One who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. Think of 38 years of day after day going to this pool and hoping against hope that you were going to be healed. 38 years is a long time. A long time. So when Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" What a question, right? What a question. Do you want to get well? I think it's great. It's like kind of duh. I'm here 38 years. What do you think? But I found it interesting that question that Jesus very often uses a question at the beginning of an interchange with someone to get right to the heart of the matter, right? Remember, he said to the Samaritan woman, he said, where's your husband? He got right to the meat of the matter. I think this question was more to it than just an idle, what do you think? Do you want to get well? Would you like to get well? What do you think? In some ways, this question asks this man to count the cost. Would you like to be living a life of wellness that's going to bring with it more responsibility? You won't be able to lay here every day. You won't have to depend on your family, but you may have to depend on yourself. You're going to have to maybe get a job. Is that what you want? Would you be willing to push yourself a little bit to get this healing? Or maybe are you going to be able to support yourself? Would you want to get well and support yourself instead of depending on other people? Or are you willing to stop excusing things and just lying there and making, oh, well, woe is me? Some people thrive on that. I have known people, and I'm sure you have too, who kind of like being the martyr. It kind of gets comfortable for them. And Jesus is asking this man to evaluate this and say, hey, do you really want to get well? Are you going to take up your responsibilities if you get well? Well, there's a lot entailed to it. And I think it's more than just an invitation. I think it's a probing thought that Jesus really is giving this man. Do you want wellness and all that will come with it? Count the cost, I think I have struggled with this many times because for a while I was praying for patience, and boy, did I get a lot of trials. I'm like, oh gosh, this is what they mean when they say be careful what you pray for. How do you learn patience? You learn patience by going through trials. So when you say to God, I want to be a more patient person, you got to know that means more trust in Jesus, because you're going to go through some things to develop that patience. Kind of like going to the gym. You can't develop the good muscles and the energy and the good cardiac rate if you're not willing to put the work in, So it's like saying, do you want a college degree? Well, are you willing to put in the long hours of study? Do you want a new job? Are you willing to take with it the responsibilities or maybe a longer commute? Do you want your spouse to change? Well, maybe what God's going to do is make your relationship better by helping you grow and helping you be the best you can be. There's a cost to some of these things. Are you willing to make all the changes and compromises it's going to take to get married? Some people who are praying to get married because they're single, they really don't know what that involves. So what Jesus said, are you sure you want to get married? There's a cost there. And we have to be willing to own up to that kind of responsibility. And so these are the things Jesus is asking him when he says this. When he says, do you want to get well? So let's see, how does he respond? Verse 7, Sir, the invalid replied, I have no one to help me in the pool when the water is stirred. While I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me. At first when I read this, I felt sorry for this guy. Poor guy, laying by the pool, can't get in there, everybody else gets there first, okay? But in another moment, I'm thinking, in a way, isn't that just a big excuse? If you really wanted something badly enough, in 38 years, you don't think you could have figured out a way? I mean, have somebody help you or get closer to the water, or I don't know. There just seems like be 1,000 ways you could try to attempt that. To me, this seems like a justification or rationalization, an excuse, basically, that he's giving. And it shows a little bit of a lack of character there, too, doesn't it? Like, oh, well, woe is me. I can't get down to the water. Everybody gets there first. I think it's human nature to try to justify some of these things. And I was thinking about rationalizing and justifying in my own life. And one of the things I struggled with many, many years ago and used to make excuses for is worrying. Now, I know some of you don't think worrying is a sin. You think it's normal, okay? In my mind, being concerned is normal. But when it goes over into worry, where you are dreading something, where you're stewing on it, where you're thinking about it all the time, where you're imagining scenarios, and what if this, and if I don't know about that, and oh my gosh, and I can't believe it, and dear God help me, but you're not really letting it go to God, you're just trying like that, kind of like begging, and then taking it back and worrying about it some more and thinking about it some more. That's the kind of worry I'm talking about. It's kind of like the difference between eating, which is healthy, and gluttony, which is not, okay, or money, which is healthy, but the excess of yearning for money and greed and the love of money, that's sin. So, having friends is a great thing, but caring more about your friends than you do about your family or about God, or caring what other people think more than what God thinks of you, that now you're getting into sin. So for me, worry was sin, okay, for me. I'm not saying it is for you, but I am saying that whenever there's an excess of worry, it becomes something sinful. And one of the things that struck me when I was dealing with this and really struggling with it was the verse in Matthew, which we've read 100 times, but sometimes you read it and it feels like Jesus is talking right to you. So verse 31 in Matthew 6, so do not worry. I stopped when I read that and I thought, it's a command. It doesn't say, I don't think you should worry, or gee, worry is not really very good for you, or think about that worry, No, do not worry. Saying, what shall we eat? What shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things. Now we're starting to see that it's sinful, okay? Believers don't sit there and worry about things that they know God is going to take care of or that only God can control. Pagans do that. People who don't know God do that. And for the pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. So here, God was saying to me, you're sitting around worrying means you don't believe I will take care of it. It's an absence of faith. And what does he say is the opposite of that? Prayer, seeking him, seeking his kingdom. The pagans run around worrying. What's going to happen about this? And oh my gosh, and I don't know what's going to happen. And what if I do that? And then this happens, and then that, And I wasted so much of the time that God gave me and so much of the energy that God gave me worrying about things that only God could control. And that was a lack of faith on my part. And it was sinful. Now, do I still do it occasionally? Of course, because we're all sinful human beings. Nobody's perfect, But I catch myself faster. I go to God in prayer and ask for him to take that away from me and help me to, think clear thoughts and praiseworthy thoughts and trustworthy thoughts. Of course, it's there. But what I used to say is, well, I can't help it. I'm just a worrywart. I've always been a worrywart. Worrying goes in my family. My mother worried, my grandmother worried, my father, That's the kind of justification and rationalization that this invalid was doing. Well, I want to get well, but every time the water goes, I just can't get there. Somebody else gets there first. Woe is me, And you can justify that and believe it after a while. Because I believed that my worrying was just part of my nature. And hey, God created me this way. No, that's rationalizing. Maybe God created me to be a person sensitive to what might happen, but that doesn't mean I have to worry. If I trust him, I don't have to. And what this invalid is saying here is, he's hopeless. He's lost hope. And when you've lost hope, you've lost God. He said, there's no way. I can't get down to that water. It's just too far away, and everybody gets there before me, and I can't help it. Okay, so verse 8, Jesus is commanding him now. His response is to command him. Just like when Jesus' response to my worrying was, so do not worry. Okay, that's a command. Listen to the command Jesus gives to this guy. Get up, pick up your mat, and walk. And at once, the man was cured, and he picked up his mat, and he walked. I just love it. I just love it. It was so simple. So simple, isn't it? With God, so often we make it complicated, and he makes it simple. I'm here, you can walk, get up. No excuses. And at once he did it. He was cured. All right, now here comes the uh-oh. The day on which this place took place was the Sabbath. Uh-oh. So the Jewish leaders said to the man who had been healed, "It's the Sabbath. The law forbids you to carry your mat." I'm laughing at that because really the law said, keep the Sabbath. But then the Jews came along and made up all these teeny little rules so that people would have to obey all these little rules. Rules are man-made. Law is God-made. God-made. So God made the rule, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. But the Jews made up all these little teeny rituals and rules that you had to do in order to make sure you did that law. And one of them was you couldn't pick up your mat. Unbelievable. It's kind of like you missed the big picture, people, and worried about the teeny details. And don't we do that so often in the church, in our country? You know, we get caught up in these teeny little details that don't mean a hell of beans, and we miss the big picture. They missed the big picture. Jesus did a miracle. He healed someone. He is God himself in man form, and you missed it. People of religion, because that's what they were, the religious leaders. You missed it. You missed the miracle of a lifetime because you were more worried about the mat than you were, and the Sabbath, than you were about the miracle. And I think that happens a lot of times. You can't see the forest for the trees because you get so worked up about small little things that really, truly don't matter, you know. And that's what they did. They were hugely interested in this mat. 11, verse 11. But he replied, "The man who made me well said, 'Pick up your mat and walk.'" He's saying, hey, what about the miracle? That's the important part. Verse 12. So they ask him, "Who is this fellow who told you to pick it up and walk?" Okay. Do you think they care about the miracle? Do you think they want to see Jesus and follow him? No, I don't think so. I think what they want is to go get him because you did this on the Sabbath, and how dare you? So the man who was healed had no idea who it was, for Jesus had slipped away into the crowd that was there. That's no accident either. Nothing Jesus does is an accident. If he slipped away, he didn't want to confront the people right then. He didn't want to do it. He wanted it to be about the miracle. It wasn't the right time, I don't think, to act. Okay, so verse 14. Later, Jesus found him at the temple and said to him, "See, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something else worse may happen to you." Jesus went back to the temple because he thought, this physical healing, it's not enough. What I really care about with this guy is a spiritual healing. Okay? Remember me, I'm Jesus, I healed you. Now, get busy on your spiritual life. Believe in me. Stop sinning. Follow the right way. Get in touch with God. You've been laying there making excuses for 38 years. Get it together. He wants him not only to grow physically, now that he can walk, but especially to grow spiritually, because that's what's the real important thing to Jesus. Not so much the walking, but the fact that this healing has brought you closer to God, and you now want to follow his way. You're changed. That's what healing is all about. He's changed. He's changed from a liar who's laying there justifying himself and not taking up and trying, to someone who's now walking and able to address his life in a great spiritual way. So he's saying, stop sinning, or something worse may happen to you. Verse 15. The man went away and told the Jewish leaders that it was Jesus who made him well. So he identified Jesus now that he has been a changed man spiritually, and his sins were forgiven as well as that spiritual healing. And now he knows who it was. He knows it was Jesus. So now he not only has had the physical healing, but he can follow Jesus and he can have a spiritual healing as well, which will put his life in a whole different way, won't it? He'll be strong physically and strong spiritually, full of joy, not just joy from the healing, but joy from living a new way. It's a wonderful story. And we're going to talk some more about this Sabbath thing because these Jews haven't given up yet. They're going to go after Jesus for this Sabbath healing. And they're going to worry about the nitty-gritty details and the laws that they made up, the rules that they made up, I should say. They weren't laws, really, in a way. They were man-made rules. So I'll be looking at that next as we continue in John 5. But I hope that you have a day free from worry and putting your trust in the Lord. So have a great day.